In the year 1860, Cold Hollow stood as a lonely sentinel amidst sprawling forests and rugged mountains in Montana. The settlement was small, its inhabitants tied together by faith and fear, living under the watchful eye of a strict Puritan code. Wooden homes with steep roofs lined the narrow dirt paths, their windows often shuttered tight against the outside world. Whispered prayers and stern warnings filled the air, creating an invisible barrier that kept outsiders at bay and left little room for compassion. The townsfolk lived in constant vigilance, believing that any hint of straying from their rigid beliefs could invite calamity. Shadows often danced along the edges of their lives, each flickering light reminding them of the darkness they feared. It was in this atmosphere of distrust and anxiety that Edith Harker walked through her days. Known for her kind heart and gentle spirit, she spent much of her time caring for the sick or helping those in need. Yet, despite her good intentions, the people of Cold Hollow did not see her as a blessing. Instead, she was often regarded with suspicion. Edith had always felt different from those around her. Her wild curls framed a face full of warmth and empathy, qualities that seemed to set her apart in a community that valued conformity above all else. The townsfolk whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. They called her strange and spoke about how her laughter echoed like a warning bell through the quiet streets. In their eyes, she was an anomaly, a potential threat to their way of life. Then came the day when everything changed. A young boy named Thomas fell ill after playing near the forbidden woods at the edge of town. His fever burned hot, leaving him pale and weak. Panic swept through Cold Hollow like wildfire as parents gathered in worried clusters, exchanging fearful glances. When word spread that Edith had been seen near Thomas shortly before his collapse, accusations began to fly like arrows aimed straight at her heart. Which, someone shouted first, their voice cracking with righteous fury. The term echoed off the walls of homes as more voices joined in, chanting the same accusation with fervor. Suddenly, Edith's name became synonymous with fear and malice. The townsfolk quickly united in their condemnation of her character. It didn't matter that she had never harmed anyone. All they could see were shadows cast by doubt. As night fell over Cold Hollow, torches flickered to life like angry stars in the dark sky. A mob formed, fueled by fear and a desperate need to find someone to blame for their suffering. They surged through the streets, dogs barking madly at their heels, their minds clouded with rage and righteousness. Each step toward Edith's home felt justified. They believed they were protecting their community from evil. Edith sat alone in her small cabin, a trembling hand pressed against her chest as she listened to their shouts grow louder outside. She could feel their anger radiating through the walls like heat from a blazing fire. Her heart raced as she realized that there was no way to reason with them now. They had made up their minds. She had become a pariah overnight. With nowhere to turn, Edith bolted out the back door into the dense woods behind her home. Branches clawed at her clothes as she ran through the darkened trees, breathless and terrified. The sound of barking dogs followed close behind, sending waves of panic coursing through her veins. She raced deeper into the forest, praying to find safety among its shadows but knowing that even nature itself felt hostile at that moment. Suddenly, amid her frantic escape, she stumbled upon a hidden path, one that spiraled down into a narrow canyon veiled by thick bushes and towering rocks. With little time to think, she took a tentative step into this secluded world just as a shadow loomed behind her. Elias Crow's silhouette broke through the trees, tall and imposing, yet somehow ruggedly handsome with an aura of danger about him. He had been notorious long before rumors claimed he was dead. Tales of his daring exploits danced on every tongue in Cold Hollow. Now he stood before her like a ghost from stories past. Without a word exchanged between them, Elias reached out and pulled Edith into the depths of his hidden sanctuary, a place she never would have imagined existed so close to a town consumed by fear and blame. As he dragged her away from danger, a new chapter began for both of them, a chapter filled with survival, secrets, and an unexpected bond that would change everything they knew about themselves and each other. The sun rose gently over Cold Hollow, casting a warm glow on the wooden houses that dotted the settlement. Birds chirped merrily, but beneath the surface tranquility lay an undercurrent of tension. That morning, young Thomas Thompson would wake to a day that would change his life and Edith Harker's forever. Thomas was a bright-eyed boy with boundless energy, often found playing near the edge of the forbidden woods. His laughter rang out like music as he chased butterflies or climbed trees, much to the delight of his friends. But today was different. As he awoke, his mother noticed his flushed cheeks and the way he shivered beneath the covers, despite the warmth of the summer sun streaming through the window. An uneasy feeling settled in her stomach, and within hours, panic began to unfold throughout Cold Hollow. As news of Thomas's sudden illness spread through the tight-knit community like wildfire, concerned parents gathered in hushed circles in front of their homes. They exchanged worried glances and whispered prayers for the child's recovery. When one of the mothers mentioned having seen Edith nearby earlier that week, an unspoken fear took hold of them all. Edith had been tending to her small garden outside her cabin when she spotted Thomas picking wildflowers nearby. She called out to him, urging him to be careful by the edge of the woods. He had laughed, completely unbothered by her warnings as he skipped away with flowers in hand. But now, here they were, desperate and looking for someone to blame. A voice erupted from the nearest gathering of parents. It was Mrs. Winchester, her eyes wide with fear as she pointed an accusatory finger towards Edith's cabin. At that moment, it was as though a spell had been cast. A wave of hysteria swept through the crowd, igniting their collective imagination against the kind-hearted woman who often helped their families. Edith Harker, someone else shouted, fueling their frenzy. She's always been odd, talking to animals and wandering into the woods. It must be her doing. Edith was oblivious to the brewing storm until she heard footsteps pounding toward her door. Heart racing, she opened it just as Mrs. Winchester charged up her porch steps with fire in her eyes. Your meddling has brought this curse upon us. This is your fault, she screeched, tears mingling with fury on her cheeks. What? What do you mean? I've done nothing wrong. Edith replied in disbelief, confusion swirling inside her like a tempest. She had only tried to help. But before she could explain herself or defend her actions, more townsfolk joined Mrs. Winchester on her porch. Their faces were twisted in anger and fear. Torches flickered ominously in the hands of some men in the back, a stark reminder of how quickly hysteria could turn into violence. As they pressed closer to her door, accusing whispers filled the air like poison. It's witchcraft, someone yelled from behind the crowd. She must pay for bringing this sickness upon our child. The words struck at Edith's heart like daggers. She felt trapped in a nightmare, branded guilty without a shred of evidence or understanding from those she had once helped willingly. Dread settled over her as she realized that she might become a target simply for being misunderstood. In moments, a mob formed, driven by fear-mongering and misplaced blame. As torches lit up in angry hands, these supposed guardians turned into hunting dogs seeking prey instead of protection. Each shouted accusation piled onto her guilt like heavy stones chained around her ankles. Desperate thoughts raced through Edith's mind as she stepped back into her home, clutching her chest tightly in fear as chaos unfolded outside. She had always sought refuge in helping others. Now she found herself at odds with them all. The storm grew more intense as night fell across Cold Hollow, the stars hidden behind swirling clouds that mirrored the turmoil brewing within its inhabitants' hearts. With no place left to run and nowhere left to hide, Edith knew that flight was her only option. With their voices ringing loudly outside her door and panic rising like flames in her chest, she slipped out the back door into the thick woods beyond. A desperate attempt at survival amidst senseless accusations and burning torches illuminating only hatred and misunderstanding. The shadows wrapped around her like a comforting cloak as she plunged deeper into the underbrush, where familiar trails soon transformed into unknown paths filled with uncertainty. As panic swelled with every heartbeat, it became clear that she was fighting for more than just her life. She was fighting against an entire community's fears and beliefs, a battle not only for survival but also for understanding and truth in dark times. As darkness descended over Cold Hollow, the atmosphere shifted from mere tension to a palpable wave of fear. The once familiar faces of neighbors and friends transformed into grimaces of suspicion and anger. Whispers filled the air, coiling like smoke around the wooden homes, fueled by hysteria that had spread through the settlement like a plague. It took only moments for the townspeople to turn their eyes toward Edith Harker. With every passing hour, more townsfolk joined in their accusations, convinced that Edith had cast a dark spell on young Thomas. The rumor mill churned relentlessly. Stories began to grow exaggerated under the weight of fear. People recalled seeing her speaking to animals or wandering out too late into the woods, acts that seemed harmless enough at first but now appeared sinister under the heavy cloud of suspicion. Do you remember the time she wandered into those woods? Mrs. Winchester cried out, her voice rising above the murmurs. What if she was up to no good? What if it was her doing all along? A chorus of agreement echoed around her, as if each word added fuel to an already blazing fire. Soon, Tales transformed into truths in their minds. They imagined dark rituals taking place in the moonlight and sinister laughter echoing among the trees. Rumors morphed into accusations, and within hours, Edith's name became synonymous with malevolence. "Witch!" shouted one man suddenly, his voice breaking through the crowd like a thunderclap. The single word cut through fear and uncertainty, sending shockwaves through the hearts of everyone present. It took only this one accusation for others to join in. 100 voices quickly rose in unison, chanting her name like a dreadful incantation. As night fell deeper upon Cold Hollow, a mob began to form on Edith's doorstep, torches flickering ominously as they moved with purpose. Glares burned with righteous fury as mothers clutched their children and fathers ignored their better judgment in favor of blind anger. They were no longer guardians, they were hunters seeking prey. Edith sat alone in her cabin, heart racing as she overheard snippets of conversation outside her door. Fear pulsed within her like a wild drumbeat as she realized the extent of their fury. She pressed her ear against the creaky wooden walls and listened intently. "She must pay for what she's done," one voice cried out. "She's an evil spirit. Let's rid our town of her," another added, sending chills down her spine. Each word felt like a dagger aimed straight at her heart, twisting deeper into the fabric of her being as panic threatened to consume her. She had dedicated her life to helping these people. How could they turn on her so easily? Trapped between disbelief and despair, she felt as though she was suffocating beneath their relentless hatred. Suddenly, someone pounded on her door, a heavy thud filled with violent intent. "Edith Harker, come out here and face us." The voice was demanding, filled with an urgency that suggested there would be no mercy if she did not respond. Summoning all her courage, she opened the door just enough to peer out at the faces twisted with rage. Their eyes glowed in the dim light of torches like predatory animals stalking their prey. "Your meddling has brought this curse upon our child." Mrs. Winchester screamed once more, foam forming at the corner of her lips as she spoke with fervor. "What? I've done nothing wrong," Edith pleaded as desperation crept into her voice. But reason fell on deaf ears. They were determined to see justice served by whatever means necessary. Then came another shout from deep within the crowd. "Grab her. She won't escape." The mob surged forward. Torches raised high illuminated their faces, grim masks determined for violence, and behind them came dogs barking furiously, wild and frantic in their quest for scent. With every heartbeat echoing in her ears like an alarm bell ringing clearer than ever before, panic seized Edith's heart. She knew she must act fast. Turning away from those accusing eyes and shaking fists, she slipped back inside and bolted out through the back door, plunging headfirst into the woods behind her home. The branches clawed at her clothes as she darted into darkness. Every sound, the snapping twigs beneath hurried feet and the howling wind, seemed amplified in this terrifying escape. Shadows enveloped her as she ran deeper into nature's embrace. There was no clear path ahead, only uncertainty, but staying meant certain capture or worse. She fled with adrenaline coursing through her veins alongside a gnawing desperation not just to survive, but also to find a way to reclaim a sense of self that had been stripped away by fear and misunderstanding. As Edith sprinted further into the depths of the woods, chasing shadows became not just about escaping an angry mob, but about finding clarity amid chaos. A quest for survival that would lead not only through wilderness but also through truths yet unveiled in a world turned upside down by superstition and fear. Edith Harker fled into the dark embrace of the woods, heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. Each step she took crunched loudly on the fallen leaves, an unsettling reminder that danger was close behind her. The sound of barking dogs echoed in the distance, feral and relentless, as the angry mob pressed on, torches flickering like wild fireflies in the night. She could hear their shouts growing louder, filled with rage and demands for justice. They were convinced she was a witch that needed to be captured. A tangle of branches clawed at her clothes as she dashed deeper into the forest, their gnarly fingers reaching out as if to halt her escape. Fear coursed through her veins like ice water, but determination propelled her forward. She had to survive, she had to find a way to prove her innocence. Images of the townspeople's twisted faces flashed in her mind. How quickly they had turned against her, forgetting all the kindness she had shown them. Edith stumbled over roots that snaked across the path but quickly regained her footing. She couldn't afford to hesitate. Each second counted, and the gnashing of teeth from the hunting dogs was growing closer by the moment. In those frantic moments of flight, her thoughts raced. How could she escape? Where would she go? She had always felt at home among the trees and wildlife, but now they felt foreign, filled with lurking shadows in this desperate hour. With darkness wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket, she focused on breathing, slow and steady, trying to calm her racing heart. Dead branches snapped beneath her feet. Here in nature's realm, each sound seemed magnified. The wind whistled through the trees above, making eerie noises that only added to her paranoia. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, though deep inside, doubt gnawed at her spirit. Pushing deeper into the woods, Edith's mind became a mix of terror and resolve. She recalled time spent wandering these trails as a girl, feeling safe and free among nature's offerings. Little did she know that those paths would now serve as a lifeline in a fight for survival. Suddenly, an idea sparked to life amidst the chaos. If she could find a place to hide herself until nightfall or until things calmed down, perhaps she could escape detection. So with renewed purpose, she searched frantically for any signs of shelter, an overhanging rock or a thicket where she could conceal herself. Edith pushed onward, sweat trickling down her forehead despite the cool night air. Her breath came in quick gasps as fear gripped every part of her being. As she rounded a bend in the trail, a glimmer caught her eye. A narrow canyon revealed itself just ahead. It seemed inviting yet foreboding at the same time. On instinct, she darted towards it with urgency. The entrance was concealed by thick bushes and low-hanging branches that swayed gently in the breeze as if urging her inward. Without hesitation, she slipped through the opening and pressed herself against the cool stone wall of the canyon as it enveloped her in darkness. She crouched low and held her breath, straining to hear over the sound of blood rushing in her ears. The cacophony of barking dogs grew louder outside as they searched relentlessly for their quarry. Edith squeezed her eyes shut and whispered a silent prayer for protection. The world outside seemed almost surreal as panic reigned in an unending symphony of voices and footfalls echoing against nature's cathedral walls. In here, it was dark and silent. Every ounce of fear became hope wrapped inside desperation. As moments stretched into what felt like eternity, Edith dared not move. Then came voices, angry shouts mingling with commands to search wider among the trees for signs of movement. They were getting closer with each passing moment. She could feel them looming just beyond reach. Her heart sank further into dread when suddenly one voice broke through with clarity. She must be here somewhere. Keep searching. Adrenaline surged through Edith once more as panic clawed at every inch of rational thought. Escape seemed so near yet painfully far away. Summoning all her strength, she crouched even lower against the cool rock wall behind her while peeking through a narrow gap between leaves showing only shadows of light filtering through from above. Amongst those shadows emerged a figure, a tall man clad in dark clothing stepping cautiously toward where she hid. It was then that Edith recognized him by fleeting glimpses illuminated by torchlight. It was Elias Crow, the notorious outlaw who had long ago been said to be dead. In that instant of recognition, everything changed. Survival would no longer be hers alone. This stranger might hold secrets that could lead them both away from perilous outcomes. With bated breath and hesitation swallowed deep within herself, Edith braced for whatever might come next in this twisted tale of fate brought together by fear and darkness. But together they might find hope amidst despair instead. Huddled against the cold stone wall of the canyon, Edith Harker felt her pulse racing as the chaotic sounds of the mob faded into the background. Just as despair threatened to consume her, she caught sight of a figure approaching through the shadows, a tall man cloaked in darkness, moving with a grace that belied his imposing presence. When the flickering torchlight illuminated his face, she gasped. It was Elias Crow. Elias had been a ghost in the eyes of the townsfolk, a notorious outlaw whose name was whispered in fearful tones. He was said to have haunted the mountains and forests around Cold Hollow, a rogue who had been long presumed dead. Yet here he stood before her, a living embodiment of the tales that had circulated among her neighbors. His dark hair curled just above his piercing blue eyes that seemed to pierce through the veil of night, filled with an intensity that demanded attention. "What are you doing here?" he said in a low voice, glancing over his shoulder as if ensuring they were alone. His tone was strict but not unkind. "You need to stay quiet if you want to remain hidden." Edith nodded vigorously, still breathless from her escape. "I had nowhere else to go," she stammered, her voice trembling. "The townsfolk, they think I'm a witch. They're looking for me." He stepped closer, lowering his voice further so it barely reached above a whisper. "You're safe in here for now. But we must go deeper into the canyon. They won't stop until they find you." Without waiting for her response, he reached out and gently pulled her along, guiding her away from the entrance where light from the torches flickered ominously. As they moved further into the canyon's depths, Edith's awe began to overcome her fear. The shadows danced along rock walls adorned with strange markings and symbols etched long ago, artifacts of another time that hinted at secrets buried deep within this hidden sanctuary. They walked in silence for several moments until Elias finally paused at a narrow opening carved into the rock. "This is my home," he said quietly as he pushed aside some bushes and motioned for her to enter before him. Inside lay a small cave filled with discarded trinkets, a ragged cloth serving as bedding and remnants of campfires scattered like stars across the floor. Edith stepped inside hesitantly. "You've been living here all this time?" she asked softly, taking in their surroundings with curiosity mingled with trepidation. Elias leaned against the rough wall, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "It's better than being hunted by townsfolk," he replied wryly, though there was an undeniable hint of pain behind his composure. "They don't take kindly to those who stray outside their boundaries." Edith understood all too well what he meant. She had been nurturing and kind to those same people who now sought to harm her based on fear and suspicion alone. It sparked something deep within her, a realization that many wore masks in cold light while hiding chaotic truths beneath their surfaces. As a heavy silence settled between them, she studied Elias more closely. She could sense there was much more to him than just an outlaw's reputation shrouded in mystery. "What happened to you?" she finally asked gently. Elias sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair as if expelling frustrations mixed with sorrow from the past. "I made choices when I was younger, choices I can't take back," he said slowly. "I turned against the law when it became twisted by those who wield power unjustly." At his words, Edith felt an instant connection, a bond formed by shared understanding of how cruel society could be towards those who did not fit neatly within its lines. "They accused me of stealing when I stole only to survive," he continued with quiet intensity as memories seemed to swirl within him like fog rolling across mountainsides at dusk. "And any sign of weakness makes one a target." She nodded slowly. It was clear they both carried burdens born from rejection and mistrust, their lives now intertwined by circumstance and despair. "Perhaps together we can fight against this madness," she offered cautiously but with growing strength lacing through her words. Elias turned toward her fully then, searching her gaze as though trying to decipher intentions amid shadows between them. His expression softened slightly alongside newfound respect blossoming amidst adversity, someone willing to stand beside him, even after everything he had done. In that moment within darkness, where fear once reigned supreme, hope flickered anew. As unexpected allies drawn together under dire circumstances, they might alter their fates by embracing adventure illuminated not merely by survival but also by friendship forged at twilight's edge. A chance for redemption against all odds whispering unleashed dreams waiting just beyond reach in this perilous journey ahead together. The cool air of the canyon enveloped Edith and Elias, creating a strange bubble of concealment amidst the chaos outside. As they settled into the small cave that would serve as their temporary refuge, an undercurrent of tension hummed in the air between them. Though they had narrowly escaped the mob, trust did not come easily. Edith was acutely aware of Elias's presence beside her. His sharp gaze seemed to gauge her every reaction, analyzing her like prey rather than an ally. She could see the hardened lines etched in his face, evidence of battles fought both internally and externally, and a flicker of uncertainty passed between them. How could she trust him, a man with a reputation painted in shades of darkness? "What do you want from me?" she finally asked, unable to contain her curiosity nor her apprehension any longer. Her voice broke the silence that had lingered for far too long, echoing against the stone walls. Elias leaned back against the rock wall, arms crossed defensively over his chest. "Nothing you're not already seeking," he replied coolly. "Survival." "Survival," she echoed, skepticism threading through her words. "You haven't been seen for years. I've heard stories about you." He narrowed his eyes slightly but remained composed. "And yet here I am, alive and hidden from those who'd see me dead without question." Edith swallowed hard at that truth, uncertain how to navigate this precarious alliance they found themselves in. "I didn't ask for this," she said softly, staring at the rocky ground beneath her feet as shame washed over her. "The town turned against me without understanding who I am. I know what it means to be hunted by those who don't see past their own fear," Elias replied sharply. The intensity of his tone forced her to look up into his eyes again, where pain flickered amid resentment, a mirror reflecting her own turmoil. Though she feared him as much as she sought his help, there was something undeniably captivating about him, the way he spoke with conviction, how he understood what it was like to carry burdens far too heavy for one person alone. As he shifted slightly closer to the dim light filtering in from outside, she caught sight of scars on his hands, tangible reminders of struggles fought tooth and nail against an unforgiving world. A blend of wariness and strength emanated from him. It suddenly dawned on Edith that they were two souls trapped in similar positions, a shared vulnerability binding them together despite initial mistrust. "Why did you help me?" she asked earnestly, searching for clarity amidst suspicion. Elias considered her words carefully before responding. "Because nobody else would," he said quietly after a moment's pause. Each heartbeat reverberated through the silence once more. They were both grappling with their realities while realizing their lives were intertwined in unforeseen ways. Fear crept back into Edith's mind as fresh memories surfaced, the accusations hurled at her like arrows, words that couldn't be taken back. "What happens if we get caught?" she whispered anxiously, dread coloring each syllable. "If we're caught?" He ran a hand through his tousled hair again, the gesture revealing palpable frustration accompanied by confusion echoing within him as well. "Then we may very well face justice, or whatever passes for it out there." Edith shuddered at the thought but nodded, finding strength in Elias's resolve, even if buried deep behind layers of cynicism and hurt pride. The minutes slipped into hours as tension ebbed and flowed between them, while they listened intently for signs of pursuit outside. Each footfall or bark from a searching dog sent adrenaline rushing through Edith's veins anew, a visceral reminder of how quickly everything could unravel again. Then came an unexpected shift. Their conversation began to maneuver away from talks of survival toward whispers laced with empathy, small exchanges revealing vulnerabilities once cloaked beneath hardened exteriors. "What do you hope will happen when all this blows over?" Elias finally asked cautiously after some time spent shifting through thoughts about their futures amidst uncertainty. "I suppose." She hesitated momentarily before sharing truthfully what lay nestled within. "I just want to return home, to heal things that shouldn't have happened." A silent understanding passed between them, a bond forged from shared miseries even amidst fear. Perhaps trust might become possible after all. Elias hesitated before speaking again. "Then let us work together until we can find our way back." With those words spoken aloud into existence, resonating hope amid despair lingering like clouds above them both, not merely allies united against common foes, but potential friends inching towards something more profound, woven together too tightly now by circumstance alone as echoes rippled through darkness, still hiding hints waiting patiently just beyond reach, once illuminated by fragile flames ignited within hearts slowly, learning to beat alongside each other amidst brewing storms carried forth towards near-future adventures, promising brighter dawns ahead awaiting both, just out there somewhere hidden still within shadows lingering behind nightmares, waking peace once sought fervently alongside dreams, free reign unleashed yet uncharted awaiting resplendent realities, woven whole then brighter tea. On ever anew crafted together side by side, forever cut loose, sailing forward, fearless, cresting tides flowing onward, pursuing life, surging alive, recovering twisted fate, rewritten, freshly revived, courage sparked across unknown expanses reaching. With those words spoken aloud into existence, resonating hope amid despair lingering like clouds above them both. Not merely allies united against common foes, but potential friends inching towards something more profound, woven together too tightly now by circumstance alone, as echoes rippled through darkness, still hiding hints waiting patiently, just beyond reach, once illuminated by fragile flames ignited within hearts, slowly learning to beat alongside each other amidst brewing storms carried forth towards near-future adventures, promising brighter dawns ahead awaiting both, just out there somewhere hidden still within shadows lingering behind nightmares, waking peace once sought fervently alongside dreams, free reign unleashed yet uncharted awaiting resplendent realities, woven whole then brighter tea. On ever anew crafted together side by side, forever cut loose, sailing forward, fearless, cresting tides flowing onward, pursuing life, surging alive, recovering twisted fate, rewritten, freshly revived, courage sparked across unknown expanses reaching. As they settled into the cave, a sense of camaraderie began to form between Edith and Elias, tempered by the uncertainties of their circumstances. The flickering light from a makeshift lantern cast long shadows across the stone walls, creating an intimate atmosphere that invited deeper conversation. With renewed curiosity mingling with the weight of her situation, Edith felt compelled to learn more about the man who had saved her life. "Can you tell me, what made you become an outlaw?" she asked tentatively, her voice barely above a whisper as she searched his face for clues. Elias hesitated, casting his gaze downward as if the weight of his past pressed heavily on his shoulders. For a moment, silence stretched between them like an unspoken agreement, one that bound them in their shared burdens. Finally, he drew a deep breath and replied, "I wasn't always like this." As Elias began to unravel his story, the tension in the air thickened with unspoken secrets. "I grew up in a small town not far from here," he said slowly, recalling memories that felt both distant and visceral. "My father was a blacksmith, a good man who valued hard work and honesty. We lived simply but happily, until things changed." He looked off into the distance as if trying to pull forth faded snapshots lodged within his mind. Edith listened intently, captivated by the glimpses of humanity behind his hardened exterior. "There was a drought one summer that devastated our crops," he continued, tightening his jaw as frustration bubbled to the surface. "We struggled to make ends meet. My father worked harder than ever, but it was never enough." The words hung heavy in the air as Edith empathized with his plight. She had seen families torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. In these moments of connection forged through pain, she found herself feeling less alone. The day came when some men rode into town, wealthy landowners offering easy solutions at a terrible cost, Elias explained further. "They promised my father they would help us if he signed over his land," a curse wrapped in a smile. Edith's heart sank at this betrayal by those who were supposed to protect them. She could see how deeply this experience had scarred him. "But my father refused," Elias continued, determination flickering in his eyes like embers awaiting kindling. "He believed in doing what was right, even if it meant losing everything." A silence fell between them as Edith absorbed every word. She could almost hear her own heart echoing despair for all those forced into corners without options left to pursue freedom or fairness. "The wealthy men retaliated," he pressed on with conviction now. "They accused my father of stealing supplies and rallied townsfolk against him, spurred by greed and fear. They didn't care about truth, they only wanted power." "What happened?" Edith breathed out softly, fear creeping back into her thoughts, the kind that clung to her heart like ivy strangling trees. "They came for him one night," Elias recalled bitterly, clenched fist shaking at memories flooding back with vivid clarity. "I tried to intervene. I thought I could outsmart them, but I was young and foolish. All it took was one gunshot. One moment stripped me of everything I held dear." Elias paused then to steady himself against another wave of grief that crashed over him anew, raw and painful as unhealed wounds began surfacing again from years buried away beneath layers of hardship. "They killed my father," he finally whispered through gritted teeth before continuing resolutely, "and I took up arms against those who harmed us, not because I desired violence but rather stood defiant against injustice." Edith gasped softly at the realization unfolding before her. This wasn't merely a tale wrought from bravado, but rather one etched in tragedy. A soul forced down paths that led away from safety towards darkness painted with desperation for survival and vengeance against all odds. After that night, he concluded somberly, casting down towards the uneven ground beneath them where shadows danced violently alongside fears threatening hope still stuck twisting amidst turmoil just beyond reach now, but beckoning once again beautifully awaking alive nevertheless while palms opened wide. "I became what they called me, the hunted, and eventually learned how cruel society could be towards someone desperate enough not just to survive, but also reclaim dignity stripped away from him. Too long ago." A silence enveloped them, once more filled with understanding cemented within echoes shattering hearts yet intertwined now shoulder to shoulder forged stronger through trials endured together facing tomorrow upon rising tides cascading onward through life fought side by side. Yielding forth renewed courage, in each other's presence dared begin uncovering truths hidden beneath layers once shaken free finding refuge amidst heartbreak held close perhaps learning mercy opening doors leading forth. Unseen horizons glimmering bright opening possibility woven after too long abandoned shining ready take flight soaring unafraid reclaiming dreams rightfully theirs destined bound yet free journey awaiting. As dusk settled over Cold Hollow, the flickering flames of torches began to cast long shadows across the town. Panic rippled through the streets, palpable and suffocating, as the townspeople gathered in larger numbers, driven by fear and a desperate need for justice. The air was thick with tension, each breath a reminder of the chaos that had erupted since young Thomas Thompson fell ill. "Murderous witch!" someone shouted, their voice raw with fury, sending echoes through the crowd. A wave of agreement surged among the townsfolk as they rallied behind the chant, convinced that Edith Harker was to blame for their suffering. In their minds, she had transformed from a familiar face into a sinister figure draped in darkness. Fueled by fear and anger, men grabbed whatever makeshift weapons they could find, pitchforks, rifles, and torches, as they prepared to seek out the woman who had become a symbol of all their troubles. Panic thrummed through them like a living thing. They believed that capturing Edith would restore order to their lives and banish the evil that had invaded their community. "We must act before it's too late," called Mrs. Winchester from atop a crate in the center of town. Her fiery words fanned the flames of hysteria further. "If we don't find her now, more children will fall ill. We cannot let our families suffer." The mob cheered wildly at her declaration. Conviction swelled within them as they started shouting slogans of justice while marching toward the edge of town like an unstoppable force. They moved with purpose amid rising tensions, their eyes alight with determination driven by fear rather than reason. But amidst this fervor, something unexpected occurred. A sharp crack echoed through the evening air as flames leapt up from one of the wooden structures nearby, a barn that had caught fire due to a discarded torch left unattended during preparations for their search. Chaos erupted anew as villagers screamed and scattered in confusion while others attempted to douse the growing flames consuming what had once been a place of safety. Just like that, chaos transformed into destruction. Fear morphed into despair as they realized how quickly everything could spiral out of control. "Put it out! Put it out!" shouted Mr. Thompson, the boy's father, his voice laced with panic as he rushed towards the fire with others following suit, desperately trying to save what remained of their livelihoods. But more than mere buildings were threatened. Panic spilled over into violence as people grappled with mounting dread about both Edith's fate and their own future swept away in flames licking at safety's edges. "Why are we wasting time on her?" someone yelled amidst frenzied attempts at extinguishing flames. "We should be focusing on protecting our own." This suggestion sparked renewed anger among those still searching for Edith. Accusations flew back and forth like arrows soaring towards enemy lines drawn between neighbors turned foes desperate for salvation. As houses burned under flickering stars overhead obscured by smoke billowing high above rooftops newly painted red against night's backdrop, with every moment passing weighed down furiously heavy thoughts teetering precariously close to unbridled madness. A reckoning loomed larger upon them all like shadows whispering tales lost among winds grew bolder carrying warnings unheeded ahead beckoning revelations waiting patiently just beyond reach awaiting discovery. With hearts racing wildly yet fueled by frightful courage echoing around amidst cries rising above crackling embers dancing along flickering walls illuminated now brightly. The townsfolk plunged deeper into madness fueled not merely by desires for retribution but instead frantically grasping at straws drowning. Determined yet uncertain what lay ahead, and still plagued by doubts birthed when reality shattered under pressure. Each person moved amongst those battling instincts warring alongside primal fears threatening lives intertwined reflecting everywhere like mirrors splintered brighter as hope dimmed further away. Until finally fading down darkened paths winding beyond sight trailing echoes forgotten soon whispered away into memories perhaps yearning rediscover lost dreams long abandoned. But even amid despair and destruction stood potential for understanding yet unseen. That perhaps there lay within each heart an ember glowing faintly despite darkness gathering strength around it waiting silently poised just moments away from igniting within again shining forth perhaps lighting pathways anew leading forth toward healing seeking redemption, together forging bonds stronger than ever formed before. In the sanctuary of the hidden canyon, a sense of calm settled over Edith and Elias, allowing them to shed the tension that had accompanied their initial meeting. As they sat together, sharing the flickering light from their lantern, the heavy shadows around them began to recede. They found solace in this small pocket of safety, their hearts still racing from the chaos outside but now able to turn toward one another. "Do you ever think about what you would do if you could start fresh?" Edith asked, her voice filled with a mix of hope and curiosity. The question hung between them, inviting vulnerability. Elias shifted slightly, his eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions as he contemplated her words. "I used to dream about it often," he confessed, his tone laced with nostalgia. "Back when I thought there might be a chance for peace. But that feels like a lifetime ago now." Edith studied him closely, noting the lines etched into his face from years of hardship. "What would peace look like for you?" she pressed gently, eager to learn more about the man who had offered her refuge. He hesitated before speaking again, lost in memories that seemed to flicker behind his eyes like shadows dancing in the light. "It would mean waking up without fear," he finally said. "Like we could live without knowing that danger lurks at every corner, no whispers accusing us, no threats trailing after us." A sigh escaped Edith's lips as she realized how similar their fears were. She too longed for a life free from persecution and misunderstanding. "I know that feeling all too well," she murmured softly. "One moment I was caring for people I thought were my friends, and the next, I was running for my life." Elias nodded solemnly, understanding reflected in his gaze. There was a shared bond forming between them, one forged not just by survival but by mutual experiences of being cast aside by those they once trusted. "I lived my whole life trying to do right by others," Edith continued, her voice steadying as she found strength in sharing her truth. "But now it feels like I have to fight for my very existence against people who don't even know me." The lament echoed through the cave walls, solidifying their connection in unspoken solidarity. Elias leaned closer, compelled to share more of himself in return. "After my father died, I lost everything I held dear," he admitted quietly. "The town I grew up in became hostile overnight. The very people who should have supported me turned into enemies out of fear." Edith's heart ached for him. They were both victims caught in the crossfire of ignorance and hysteria. In that moment of shared grief and understanding, a flicker of hope ignited within her, a realization that they were not alone anymore. "What did you do?" she asked softly. "I took up arms against those who killed my father," he said grimly, recalling nights spent plotting revenge rather than healing from loss. "I thought becoming an outlaw was the only way to reclaim my dignity." "But it cost you your freedom," Edith replied thoughtfully. "It did," he confirmed, looking away as if wrestling with regret and sorrow entwined tightly within him. "But fighting back wasn't just about vengeance, it was also about standing up for what was right when others wouldn't." Edith felt inspired by his words. Perhaps this shared struggle could lead to something greater than survival alone. "We can help each other," she said decisively, her voice gaining strength with each syllable that flowed from her lips like a river finding its course through rocky valleys, determined yet clear. Elias met her gaze fully then, his expression shifting from guardedness into something warmer filled with possibility as he considered the prospect ahead. Two souls no longer isolated battling their fates apart, but instead forging paths intertwined together seeking light rather than darkness. "Yes," he agreed slowly but with growing conviction brightening through clouds hovering heavy above where hope had faded momentarily bleaker, yet resilient pointing toward dawn breaking new illuminating futures, waiting patiently somewhere ahead destined found, within depths still unknown further calling forth dreams yearning awaken. And though dangers loomed outside their refuge, threatening potential lives still waiting endlessly awash upon uncertain tides crashing fearlessly onward, inside this canyon flames kindled brightly beyond mere survival. As two hearts dared confront struggle together, exploring potentials dormant, longing reaching forth, grasping furrows, awaiting sowing seeds anew, perhaps yielding harvests abundant forged courage daring rise, spiraling upward. Together they would navigate whatever lay ahead. Together they would face their fears. Together they could find redemption amid chaos swirling outside, fixing broken pieces scattered along trails traversed silently. The first light of dawn crept into the canyon, casting a muted glow over the rocky walls as Edith and Elias stood side by side, contemplating the chaos waiting for them outside. The sounds of hysteria had not abated. Shouts and the crackle of burning wood still echoed in the distance, a constant reminder of the turmoil that enveloped Cold Hollow. "We can't hide here any longer," Elias said, breaking the silence, his gaze fixed on the canyon's entrance. "The townspeople will keep searching for you. If we wait too long, they'll discover our hideout." Edith turned to him, her heart racing at the thought of returning to the very place that had betrayed her. "What if they see me and try to harm me? They've already made up their minds about who I am. They've made a mistake, and mistakes can be challenged," Elias replied, his tone resolute. "But we need to face that challenge together. We can't let fear rule our lives any longer." A mix of doubt and courage churned within Edith. She felt as if she were standing at a precipice, teetering between safety in the shadows and the uncertainty that lay beyond the canyon walls. The memories of being chased and hunted flooded back. Her heart raced at the thought of facing that hysteria once more. "If we go back," she started, hesitating at the weight of her words. "What if they only want to see me punished?" "Then we fight for our truth," Elias said firmly. "There's strength in numbers, and together we can confront their fears head-on. Remember, we can show them that we're not what they think we are." Edith's eyes searched his face, taking in his determination and conviction. In that moment, she realized how much she admired him, not just for his bravery but for his willingness to believe in something greater than themselves. Could this be their moment of transformation? Maybe returning to Cold Hollow would not only mean confronting her past, but also reclaiming her future. What about your past? Edith asked softly, gauging his reaction. Doesn't it terrify you to go back? Elias paused, weighing her question carefully. Yes, he admitted at last, voicing a vulnerability rarely seen in him. But I refuse to let it define my future. It's time I face those shadows instead of letting them control my life. Edith felt a swell of admiration for him. They were both lost souls searching for redemption in a world that had shown them little kindness. Then let's do this, she said with newfound resolve. Together, they could rewrite their narratives. Together, they could challenge the false beliefs binding them. With a mutual nod sealing their decision, they gathered their few belongings and cautiously approached the canyon entrance. The soft light illuminated the path ahead, creating an almost ethereal glow around them as they stepped into the unknown. As they emerged from the sanctuary of their hiding place, a familiar chill crept back over Edith's skin. The distant shouts from Cold Hollow had transformed into an unsettling chorus, angering mobs seeking satisfaction for all their fears projected onto her. Stay close, Elias urged quietly as they moved through the brush toward town, determination etched into every line of his face. They navigated through frayed paths lined with dark woods trembling beneath their feet. Each step felt like walking toward an impending storm, a conflict brewing between two parties poised on different sides of truth. When they reached the outskirts of town, Edith could see flickering flames rising in the distance, an ominous reminder of what was happening in Cold Hollow. The village was steeped in turmoil. Shouts bounced off wooden structures that now looked mere outlines against a backdrop painted in smoldering hues. We need to find a way to speak to them all at once, Elias said, scanning the scene before them. Edith swallowed hard as she spotted a makeshift gathering forming in front of the tavern, people fueled by a dangerous mix of anger and fear standing together. Eyes starting searchingly amidst framed faces reflecting townspeople once friendly now twisted by suspicion. She could feel her heart pounding against her chest as dread began creeping back into her mind. Yet within the maelstrom loomed hope, rekindling embers sparked anew away from darkness. Let me do the talking, she whispered urgently to Elias, her gaze steady now full with conviction igniting fervor surging through veins intertwined with adrenaline swelled boldly without doubt daring venture brave enough proclaim rallying truth tightly bound longing release. No, Elias replied firmly but gently. We will both speak together as one. Let them see two people standing united against injustice. Edith met his eyes and nodded. Clarity washed over her as they took one final deep breath before stepping forward into view confronting society's judgment terrifying yet illuminating finally awakening both reframed narratives reshaped anew glowing brightly alongside possibility beckoning, ever near. As they stood together on the precipice of change readying themselves prepared forging onward toward adversity awaiting armed only with truth yearning forged destinies yet realized igniting courage propelled flight soaring higher brighter resilient flames reborn. Vigorously resonating boldly challenging societal beliefs enkindled midst chaos swirling ahead awaiting unity triumphant found again. Stepping out of the canyon, Edith and Elias found themselves facing the town of Cold Hollow, the chaotic energy palpable as they approached. The early morning light illuminated the scene, revealing a gathering of townspeople who had assembled in front of the tavern, torches in hand and expressions twisted by fear and anger. Their shadows loomed large on the ground, dark figures against a backdrop of smoke rising from the remnants of buildings consumed by fire. As they drew nearer, Edith's heart raced like a wild stallion. She felt a mixture of dread and determination. This was her chance to reclaim her narrative. We need to stand our ground, she said quietly to Elias, who nodded in agreement but wore a look of concentration that betrayed his own conflicts. The crowd parted slightly as they stepped into view, murmurs rippling through the assembly like waves crashing upon a shore. Eyes filled with suspicion and fury turned toward them, familiar faces now distorted by fear. In that moment, she felt utterly exposed, as if all her vulnerabilities were laid bare for judgment. Look who it is, called out Mrs. Winchester, her voice slicing through the murmurings like a knife. The witch returns with her accomplice. Edith felt Elias tense beside her at the accusation directed at her, a word that had haunted her since this ordeal began. It was a term heavy with historical weight and cultural implications. It stung as it resonated through the air. They're just here to deceive us further, another shouted from the back of the crowd. Edith's breath caught in her throat, but she grasped Elias's arm tightly, grounding herself. No, we're not here to deceive you. she called out, summoning every ounce of courage within her. "We're here to tell you the truth." A chorus of disbelief rose up from the crowd. Fingers pointed accusingly, while voices echoed with outrage that masked deep-seated insecurities and fears. "Truth? You think we will believe anything you say after what you've done?" Mrs. Winchester shot back, fury radiating from her as she stepped forward defiantly. Elias stepped forward protectively beside Edith. "You don't know what you're speaking about," he exclaimed, his voice powerful enough to silence even the most raucous among them momentarily. "You have been led by fear into a darkness that blinds you to what is real." "Real?" someone scoffed. "What do you know about real? You've been hiding like a coward." Edith felt anger bubbling up within her, but forced herself to remain calm. This wasn't merely about them anymore. It was about proving their strength and unity against irrational beliefs rooted deep within prejudice. "You want to know real?" She pressed on, taking a step forward with newfound conviction fueling each word spoken aloud, echoing sharply, piercing through tension, thickening air like fog rolling through trees drifting closer. Real is watching someone suffer because people refuse compassion in favor of accusations. Real is being hunted for things you didn't do. Real is being labeled as something you are not simply because it's easier than confronting your own failings. The crowd shifted slightly uneasily at her words as emotion swirled within them. Confusion mingled with realization, illuminating faces once clouded, stemming toward awakening, perhaps slowly breaking through their collective hysteria, concealing truths buried away. Elias seized upon this moment. "We have both faced loss and betrayal, but we stand here together, willing to fight for our dignity against oppression. Look around you. There are those still suffering from your actions, driven not by reason but rather fear. It's time we break free from this cycle." Murmurs rippled through the townsfolk again. Some softened beneath realization, sparked alive, flickering embers catching fire where hope once resided, yet others grew hostile, remaining steadfast, unwilling surrender. Battle wages, not waged, honoring predetermined judgments, forcing eyes closed tighter than ever before, instead striving toward redemption, opening sunlight, warming frozen hearts. "Listen," another voice emerged among those gathered. A younger man named Peter, who had often looked up to Edith during happier times before chaos engulfed their lives, suddenly filling spaces left empty, longing brighter futures, yearned for holding hands, inviting warmth, extending friendship, desperately waiting, rekindled. Living flames beckoning forth, promising lives unafraid, unchained, soaring high, reaching heights undiscovered, daring, ignited passions, kindled anew, lifting spirits weary alongside strength. Igniting brilliance, twinkling vibrancy, rising above frantic storms fierce. "If we condemn people who have suffered just like us," Peter implored, passionately stepping closer alongside Edith, voice steadying, rising amidst cacophony, surrounding still shadows, lingering, threatening, lurking always behind, echo lingering longer, waiting patiently, gaining momentum, demanding freedom, unfurling, soaring. Rhythms cascading, bright, uplifting, jubilation, transcending darkness, ever-reaching, forming, instead light, illuminating brighter futures, restoring faith, calling past hidden away. Wrought trials together, healed whole again, healing underway, inviting, embracing community, forged anew, standing boldly, reclaiming lost dreams, found again, illuminated, seeking justice, wielding truth, compassionately beckoning next chapters, glorious, painted, vibrant, colors vivid along horizons, shimmering foremost. Tea across unmatched, endless skies, spread wide, inviting, early morning dew, sparkling, fresh, promising, laughter resonating throughout, warmly enveloping. "If we condemn people who have suffered just like us," Peter implored, passionately stepping closer alongside Edith, voice steadying, rising amidst cacophony, surrounding still shadows, lingering, threatening, lurking always behind, echo lingering longer, waiting patiently, gaining momentum, demanding freedom, unfurling, soaring. Rhythms cascading, bright, uplifting, jubilation, transcending darkness, ever-reaching, forming, instead light, illuminating brighter futures, restoring faith, calling past hidden away. Wrought trials together, healed whole again, healing underway, inviting, embracing community, forged anew, standing boldly, reclaiming lost dreams, found again, illuminated, seeking justice, wielding truth, compassionately beckoning next chapters, glorious, painted, vibrant, colors vivid along horizons, shimmering foremost. Tea across unmatched, endless skies, spread wide, inviting, early morning dew, sparkling, fresh, promising, laughter resonating throughout, warmly enveloping. And so began their confrontation against societal beliefs, entangling lies woven intricately together, playing out before them, already paving pathways, new blossoming, shared struggles once torn apart, whispering winds gently brushing, softly beckoning hope. restored blossoming freely, encasing unity firmly planted, launching forth courageous journeys, unfolding beautifully interwoven narratives, enriching lives, dearest returning home, established amidst vibrant symphony, life reclaimed vigorously, spiraling onward, marching proudly toward horizons bright. As Edith and Elias faced the townspeople of Cold Hollow, the atmosphere felt charged with anticipation. The crowd's expressions ranged from hostility to confusion, their torches flickering like the wavering certainty in their hearts. This was the moment they had prepared for, a chance to reclaim their narratives, but it was not without fear as they confronted the very community that had cast them aside. "Let us speak," Elias called out, his voice steady despite the unease swirling around them. "We are here not to fight but to share the truth." The townsfolk murmured among themselves, suspicion etched into their faces. Edith could see familiar features twisted by fear and anger, once friendly faces now hardened by accusations and blind belief in superstition. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Do you really think I could harm anyone?" Edith began, stepping forward into the light cast by their torches. "I've cared for your children, your families. You have branded me without knowing who I truly am." Mrs. Winchester stepped forward, her eyes blazing with indignation. "You are a witch. You have brought nothing but misfortune upon us." Her voice dripped with venom as she gestured emphatically toward the smoldering ruins of buildings nearby. Elias interjected before Edith could respond. "And what about the misfortune that comes from fear? What about the wrongs committed against your neighbors?" He gestured to those around him, his voice rising. "You have lost sight of compassion. Look at what you have become, paranoid hunters chasing shadows." A ripple of doubt passed through parts of the crowd. Some began to shift uncomfortably as they considered his words. Their conviction began to falter. Edith seized the moment. "Are we not all human? Have we not all felt pain?" she pleaded passionately. "You know what it is like to lose someone you love. I did not wish for this chaos. I did not wish to be hunted. If I can stand before you now and speak my truth, then surely you can find it within yourselves to listen, to remember your humanity." The tension in the air thickened as murmurs grew louder. Some townsfolk exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, while others clenched their fists tighter, still holding on to anger and fear like lifelines. "We all want justice," shouted one man from the back, desperation tinging his voice. "Justice doesn't come from violence," Elias replied sharply, his gaze unwavering as he surveyed the crowd before him. "It comes from understanding and compassion, facing our fears rather than letting them dictate our actions." With every word they spoke together, Edith and Elias chipped away at the barriers built by fear and mistrust, exposing deeper truths hidden beneath layers of societal expectations and prejudice lurking amongst them. Eager, waiting, challenged step toward healing, long overdue, calling louder, still seeking redemption amidst turmoil, unraveling tightly linked hearts. Edith spotted Peter again among those gathered. The young boy whose loyalty had shone brightly through all darkness now stood resolutely beside her, gathering courage, seeking unity, woven amidst community, reborn anew, stitched bright aspirations, seeking redemption, blooming forth renewed, revealing potential, radiant, shining, brightly beckoning. "If we allow ourselves a moment to listen," Peter urged quietly, stepping forward, his voice steady, filled with youthful wisdom, commanding attention, breaking barriers erected strong just moments earlier, unraveling notions, woven despair, traveling side by side, flourishing dreams, radiant, embracing futures warmly, inviting newcomers, joining hearts gathered, shining brighter, expanding rapidly, lighting up hues, bursting joyous life, eagerly breaking silence, promised brighter tomorrows, bearing hope, uniting, fiercely released amid chaos swirling. The murmurs morphed into conversations as townsfolk began sharing their own struggles. Stories interspersed with loss echoing along paths once hidden return, dropping shoulders burdened, raising hands, seeking reconciliation, craving something more powerful than vengeance, blossoming brightly intertwined, rekindling dreams shuddered so long behind shadows, longing escape. Amidst this newfound energy swirling around them, illuminated smiles emerging, penetrating darkness, exchanging kindness, flowing warmth, bringing together community, previously fractured, yearning, healing along paths, eagerly converging, tending wounds, reopening hearts, creating spaces, welcoming understanding. As Edith looked around at her neighbors slowly beginning to transform before her very eyes, she felt her heart burst with hope-filled yearning, desire pressing forth, resonating, transcending, standing firmly upon ground solid, worthy, reclaiming friendships lost, rekindled, yearning, embrace, stifled pathways, promised, belief forged anew, thriving together. Emboldened forges igniting, brave testimonies lighting way, guiding toward healing, unity. United under shared experiences and vulnerabilities. Edith and Elias challenged cold, hollow societal beliefs together, transforming not just their fates but reimagining futures collectively built on trust, camaraderie, reclaiming lives freely, opened wide, banishing fears, dissolving burdens past yearning. Reclamation blossoming forth, inspiration illuminating journey realized, flourishing bright, resplendent, colorful, radiant, inviting warmth, beckoning everyone forth, proudly risen, hand in hand, venturing beyond boundaries, newly forged, embracing moments, unfolding eternally alongside horizons, beckoning bright, promising pathways where love reigns, boundless, reaching hearts open, warm, acceptance flourishing, transformative journeys filled, endlessly benevolent waves rushing forth, revealing lives stitched vibrantly, welcoming all, weaving legacies cherished, envisioned, alive, renewed, full, forever shining, beautifully, brightly illuminating presence, kindling bright spirits, soaring high, transcending limits, courageously embarking even brighter chapters yet unwritten, united under shared experiences and vulnerabilities. Edith and Elias challenged cold, hollow societal beliefs together, transforming not just their fates but reimagining futures collectively built on trust, camaraderie, reclaiming lives freely, opened wide, banishing fears, dissolving burdens past yearning. Reclamation blossoming forth, inspiration illuminating journey realized, flourishing bright, resplendent, colorful, radiant, inviting warmth, beckoning everyone forth, proudly risen, hand in hand, venturing beyond boundaries, newly forged, embracing moments, unfolding eternally alongside horizons, beckoning bright, promising pathways where love reigns, boundless, reaching hearts open, warm, acceptance flourishing, transformative journeys filled, endlessly benevolent waves rushing forth, revealing lives stitched vibrantly, welcoming all, weaving legacies cherished, envisioned, alive, renewed, full, forever shining, beautifully, brightly illuminating presence, kindling bright spirits, soaring high, transcending limits, courageously embarking even brighter chapters yet unwritten,